Yeah, good.
Oh, thanks, yeah. Well, it's Colin here, bloody again here. I've been putting videos on, and it's the time, 11:45 here. Keep an eye on the time, because the time just goes by. What I do is I say I'm going to put a video on about something, might be, say, sex problems in New Zealand, but I don't manage to. About half an hour goes, and I'm kind of didn't manage to finish it off. So we're looking at, so that's a problem. But I want to recap on where we're going. You see, it's no good just keeping on going and going without recapping, because we've got to, I've just been having a look at some notes and that just last night and today a bit, and I come across things that I didn't know about, even an article about me personally in the paper. It passed about me in the Dominion Post. I didn't realise that article was on me. It's about this sex again in New Zealand, and of course when you're on sex they really come down on you like a ton of bricks, and that is their custom and that. One poor cunty gets 7 years imprisonment for kissing a girl and kissing a few women, and been trying to sort the one out. And I think I might have come to the conclusion of why it is, and I might have mentioned about it. It's because they're frightened that this cunt might start kissing a few tourists or something. Not that there's much tours as much at the moment, but of course with this virus thing, but there's probably still frightened as that, but they're also frightened of people out of Wellington. Women might come and get kissed in the street, and it might be bad for Wellington. So they can't put a guy 7 years in jail for that, but they twist it and distort it and use it for something else, like he's broken the third strike. Well, the third strike, although he's got that, third strike is for criminals, not some poor cunt that hears the call and wants to obey the call. As I say, if men were kissed by women, they could be kissed day and night for 10 years in supermarkets everywhere, in their own homes, burst into their homes, start kissing them and everything. Might not be one complaint in 10 years. In fact, I just came across an article again just early this morning on one of my notes. I cut cuttings out of the paper and that. And this one again was just new to me. Like, I've probably read of it, you see, but it's just new to me because we've got to keep consolidating, and when you consolidate, you bring things back that you'd sort of forgotten about, or it entrenches it deeper. And this one was, this guy was outside the letterbox or something, naked, and a couple of girls came along, and of course the usual story, when there's a couple of girls with a male naked, and of course they call the police or something, and then the police came, and the usual story. But it certainly wouldn't work the other way. If, say, a woman came out naked and two boys were walking along the same age as the two girls, well, there'd be no calling the police then. So it's not consistent here in New Zealand. What they're basically afraid of, women, is this cunt, some guy will stick it into their young kids. That's all they're bloody afraid about. But it wouldn't happen though with these two girls, because they were probably too young, and there probably wouldn't have been that problem. So you see, they seem to have got a hereditary problem womanhood have on sex. Take for example, say a babysitter or a mother felt up her little boy, say, or the babysitter, babysitted for some children, you see, and this little boy, the babysitter, say, felt this little guy's weapon and felt around his testes and that, and though he did not understand it, he was say 6 or 7 or something, he didn't understand it, he would sort of sense that it's sort of something normal there. Not, I mean, he's sort of young, like just too young sort of thing for that, but the idea is a sort of a natural thing, like say for example a man driving a truck. Well, that's too advanced for a 6-year-old boy. So, but you can do that in his presence. You can do things what children don't do, like driving a big truck or something. Well, why not other things? They seem to have put sex on a pedestal here in New Zealand and overseas. There's something wrong, and the Holy Spirit, who's the author of all romance, he wants to solve all these problems here. So anyway, this little girl, this mother or mother, or the baby sort of feels around his testes and that say. Now, he, as I say, although he doesn't understand it, he would sense that it's something that's natural there, kind of thing. Like the thing in itself is natural. Well, he's sort of too young, but the atmosphere, not the atmosphere, the situation is sort of, there's something that's sort of normal in itself. It's just like, say, a truck driver with a big truck going in and giving the truck control of the truck to a child, say a 6-year-old child. And so he steps down, he gives it full control, and then bang, there's an accident, you know. I mean, it's natural to drive a car, but it's just that, she's too young to drive a car, drive a big truck, you see. But it's still there. Like she could see that it's a natural thing, kind of thing, but a bit hard to explain it, I suppose. But someone other, you haven't got no problem with little boys, but you have a problem with little girls. They seem to have an hereditary problem. There's something wrong here. Women have been spoiled on sex. This is why they're moody. And it even goes to their adulthood. See, they've had everything in their own. What shall I say? Men are so dumb, but you see, men. A bit hard to explain here, but you see, men are not only dumb. As I said before, I can imagine womanhood saying, "Oh, men, they're so dumb, they don't know what's going on." Well, that's true, of course, just as they say. But there's something else about men. Especially the politicians, they go along with women on the sex business to get their vote, you see. Their vote is crucial. You see, you might wonder why that the Americans pulled out of Vietnam. They spent all that time there, men have died, and they just give it back to the Viet Cong. And they're doing the very same thing at Vietnam and what they did at Afghanistan. You see, all those men died in vain because they gave it back to the Viet Cong. And all at the time while they were racing in with a couple of thousand men to get people out of Vietnam in exactly the same way they just done recently in Afghanistan, getting people out. A couple of thousand troops racing to get people out of Kabul airport, and all it was just a Taliban that didn't even have a tank, a military tank. I hardly know they've got that, let alone any sophisticated stuff more than that. And I just seem to have got rifles and automatic weapons and trucks and that. And the same with Vietnam. They just had a bicycle battalion at the time when they were racing to get their men out of Vietnam. And same thing, exactly the same thing happened in Kabul just a few weeks ago, racing to get people out, giving the whole thing back to Taliban. As I said about New Zealand, New Zealand, say, was controlled by the Taliban. So the Americans came, set them free, set New Zealand free for 20 years, and then then what happened is they set New Zealand free, and then suddenly it changed, and they said, it's costing us too much, and we've lost so many Americans, and so they train up a few New Zealand troops, but it's not strong enough. Somehow they run away like they did with the Taliban, and they went and took Kabul straight away. In 2 or 3 days, they had Kabul, and so they give it back to the Taliban, New Zealand, and so the Taliban went straight for Wellington, to the capital, went straight into the beehive, took control of the beehive, so that they were now in control of New Zealand. I mean, America released New Zealand from the Taliban and then just gave it back to the Taliban. I mean, all those men died in vain to release New Zealand. And so you might wonder, what the hell is going on here? And when you finally find the answer, then you know. And it seems to me the answer to the problem is that why the Americans were pulled out of Vietnam and Afghanistan is simply because it was an election grab. Vote for the Democrats and we'll take the Americans right out of Afghanistan, and see how many men died, and we're going to get them all out, and all the money it cost us, and we get them all out again. Did you know? And so they get them all out of Vietnam. Well, and then election grab. So this is probably what Joe's done. You see, during the election, the Democrats, or whatever he was with, I think it might be Democrats. I think Trump, he was Republicans. I don't know, but anyway. So you find the answer. Oh, now I know why the Taliban went back. It was an election grab, and probably his own ego, Joe's own ego, to be president of the United States. So you find out, oh, now I know what the hell is going on, why they gave Vietnam back to the Viet Cong as a bicycle battalion only at the time, and racing to get all these men out of the capital of, what's the capital of Vietnam? I've forgotten, if I did know. That exactly the same pattern followed, that about 2,000 or 3,000 men racing to get these troops and things, or these people out of Vietnam. Exactly the same pattern followed just recently in Afghanistan. Kabul, a couple of thousand troops, America racing to get people out, just for some people have got a few trucks and a few rifles, and I don't think they've even got one military tank. I don't think the Taliban. Certainly in the Viet Cong, or whatever it is in Vietnam, as I say, it was just a bicycle battalion at the time. Goodness gracious me, a bicycle battalion, and they're racing to get out. But when you understand, oh no wonder it was an election grab. Now we understand. So it's like womanhood in that, when you sort of understand what's going on. With men, as I say, it's the dumbness of men which is the problem, but also election grabs. They say to the woman, oh, we'll make a big issue about this rape thing. Oh, yeah, we'll give them 5 years and we'll get what you want, and go along with them and trying to get their vote. But men, being so dumb, they don't seem to understand something about women. It's that when you knock a woman back, that's when a woman will respect you. And that's about the only time when they particularly give men respect, is when you knock them back. on sex matters, that's when they get interested in you. When you refuse their advances, sometimes they do, and and when you knock them back, like I know a friend of mine, Ron. He was a master with women. He knew how to deal with them. So when he went to see a woman, he was ready to counter-attack them. He played it like a game. He knows they want to play games. So everything they say, he knows how to counter-attack them. So he played along that lines. And he did two things, though, too, is that he looked them in the eyes. He spoke to them in the eyes. He didn't look at their tits. See, because if you do look at their tits, they start saying, oh, you're talking to my tits, talking to my breasts, you see. They know what they're doing, showing all that bloody tit. They're not dumb. It's the men, the dumb ones. They don't go around looking like that for nothing. I remember, as I mentioned in one of my videos, in Australia there, some years ago when they had these walkie-talkies, there's a woman with their skimpy attire, even in those days when the walkie-talkies, and so-called sunbathing. I say sex bathing. That's what I say, not sunbathing. Bullshit. Men are so dumb. They don't know what's going on. So anyway, what they were doing, and they're going around with walkie-talkies, trying to protect these women with their scanty clothing. And eventually one day, one of the women actually came up with the truth of the matter, which is obvious to men, but they're too dumb. They don't know what's going on. And so this woman finally spoke up and said, it's not protection we need, it's exposure. But men, being so dumb, they don't know what's going on. And so that's one problem with men. But the other problem is to get their vote. It's when you knock them back. Like, you see, Ron, he would get it. One thing he'd do, he'd look her in the eyes, talk to her in the makes, he just ignores her tits showing, speaks to her in her eyes, and then whatever she says, he knows how to counter-attack her. So when they say to Ron, they say, oh, you don't say anything about yourself. Ron just says, oh, well, you're the interesting one. They know he's playing games. They know everything about sex. There's only one possible thing that women don't know about sex, and even then I'd question it, and that is that unconsciously or subconsciously they're very sad at the mess they got themselves into, and they're actually looking for a sex prophet to bring them out of this mess they got themselves in. And yet he must be male, and he must have all the answers. He must be a sex prophet. And I have that sex prophet for you. And he's, as I mentioned before, he's the author of all romance. He made it, and that's the Holy Spirit. And he's the one I'm working with. He's the one that got me on these videos. And so he's the one that knows the answers, and he knows how to deal with womanhood. And he knows exactly what their problem is and exactly how to overcome it. So what they're doing the same thing as I mentioned about Vietnam. It was an election grab, and Afghanistan, an election grab. Oh, look, if you vote for the Democrats, we'll bring all our men. See, there's so many men lost, so much cost, we'll bring them out. And of course, election grab. And his own ego, probably. Joe's only his ego to be President of the United States. So they just don't really care about Afghanistan, really. They just want their votes. Wouldn't care about New Zealand either. New Zealand was controlled by the Taliban. 20 years later, they said, well, it's been a forever war and this, and so Taliban just come back and just control New Zealand, not a problem. Election grab, let New Zealand go. Doesn't matter, it's only a little country, little island in the sea. Forget about Afghanistan, way over there too. Forget about Vietnam, don't care kind of thing. It's hard to say, but it's probably an election grab. So with these dumb men called men in New Zealand, these dumb politicians, they think that by getting women, they'll say nice things to get their vote. Or this rape, yes, yes, yes. Anything else you want? But as I say, if you knock them back, for example, supposing say that a woman went to the car door, okay, and but you didn't open the car door or by opening up car doors too, that's another thing, you see, they just spin a web around you. Just let them open up their own car door. So if they sort of stood back, say, for you to open up the car door for them, and you said to them, or I said to them, bend over. So they bent over, and I gave them a solid boot in the arse and says, open up your own car door, you're not helpless. Strange as it may seem, that's when they give you respect. It's rather like the USSR when United Soviet Socialist Republics, when they were proper communists there in Russia and they wanted to take over the world. There was only one thing really that I can see that those proper communists in Russia at the time when they were wanting to take the world over, and that only probably stopped by prayer anyway, because they were moving. They'd taken some parts of Africa, and then suddenly they collapsed. And I think it was prayer that did it. A lot of prayer went on. But anyway, getting back to communism, the only thing I can see that particularly that communism respected was military power. When they saw the military power of the United States, that was the only thing that communism respected, and the only thing really that womanhood particularly, what should I say, what's the word I'm using, particularly to respect men, is when men knock them back. And what Ron did too, once he was in a car with this woman and she was showing leg. Oh, Ron's too smart for that. He plays the game back to them. He just looked out the window. And it was just bloody amazing that woman would phone up and say, is Ron Blair there? And even at school, the guys would say, Ron told me at school, the guys would say, how does this guy Blair get all these girls? Even at school, he was good. Because he did have blue eyes, but he's only a shortcut, Ron, and he had this pointed nose. You know how some people, most noses are sort of a roundy one, like my one, but occasionally you get somebody with pointed noses, and some people are put off by pointed noses, and Ron had a pointed nose, shortcut, and yet he got the girls, and they'd phone him up and say, is Ron Blair there? And it's just bloody amazing how Ron just was a master with women. He knew how to but they know unconsciously, they know what he was doing, but they sort of appreciate it somehow. See, they're a twisted bunch, you see. By the time you take the dumbness of men, the twisted molecules, a lot of women, and some men are twisted molecules too. It's sort of a sad state New Zealand's in. And the Holy Spirit wants to heal New Zealand. All this shit going on. Just lately, we've had, just on the news at the moment, we're in, April 21. There's a woman in hospital. She's been charged with murder for 3 of her children killed. And she's been charged with murder of 3 children. So it seems to me too, incidentally, that this lockdown is causing more deaths than what the COVID thing would do, Delta would do. The only thing with Delta is that it's just more contagious, but it's no more serious than 19 is. Most people recover from it. In fact, we looked up, my friend who's helping me with this, we looked up the smartphone to find out the percentage of people that's dying in the world as to those who live 30, recovered. However, there are some people though who really got a problem, a liver problem, and maybe not recover properly. But generally, people recover. So for a start, he got about 3 point something percent, and I thought that was too high. So he said, "Well, have another look or something." So he looked on the different smartphone, and he finally came up with a figure as 2.2%. So tie around the world, including the poverty of Africa and perhaps Brazil and that, ghettos and things, you still got 2.2% only that die of it. Most of them recover like an ordinary flus. They recover. Yeah, so in New Zealand, because there's no ghettos and there's no, there's no so-called third world approach in New Zealand. You've got benefits and that, and you go and blow their benefits and the weed and that, and then in Courtney Place here, they're begging for money and having these cardboard cart things up with written on it and something they can blow all their money on. Pokies, and the pokies are a favourite one. They lose money on, and of course the weed, and then they come, they beg for money. But I busk also, but I'm busking because for work in Africa to support on fundraising. So if you ever see me busking in Wellington, I'm fundraising. Anyway, getting back to womanhood, you see, New Zealand needs a big shake-up here, and there's something wrong, and they just don't seem to know how to fix it. And but you see, it's like this. You see, the Holy Spirit, in relation to sex matters too, He's got no hands but our hands, no feet but our feet. This is why nothing much is happening, because He's there waiting. He's got all the answers, but unless we step in, well, nothing much is going to happen. So it's up to us to get the ball rolling, and then things will happen. But you see, Christians in New Zealand, they're pretty much a wishy-washy lot, really. Seem to be more interested in the America's Cup, and more interested in the Olympic Games in Tokyo than they are being the salt of the earth. For example, the Pike River mine people could have recovered, could have been stopped. I'll give you an example. I was at a prayer meeting. We go to prayer on Monday afternoons. A few of us, 2 or 3 of us, pray about the world events, or mainly what the Muslims do to Christians and that, and kill them and cut off their arms and legs, and they cut off their heads. And so what happened in Christchurch, the mosque attack there in Christchurch, that sort of thing's going on all the time in Africa for donkey's years, but it's the Muslims doing it with Christians. They go into Christian churches and kill them and that, and burn down their building. But sometimes they're protected. Like one man, he was praying, and they went in to attack this church. And when they heard this Christian fella praying, they heard him praying before they got there, then they were more incensed than ever. And they went in, well, they tried to go in, but they couldn't. An unseen power stopped the Muslims from going into that church. And later on, during the night or so, one of them came in on his own. So they let him in, and he became a Christian before he went out. What was that unseen power? Power of God protecting for the prayers of His people and that. But anyway, in this prayer meeting once, I was praying about a situation that happened in, I've mentioned this before actually in my videos, but we're consolidating here. In China it was, my friend said, oh, that happened in China. What happened was this woman was in charge of the bell to the miners down in the coal mine. Now, if she rang that bell for no reason, by golly, they'd give her arseholes. My word, if she rang that bell for no reason, by golly, indeed, they'll give her arseholes. Anybody arseholes. So anyway, this particular day she must have been a woman of prayer, a Christian woman, and God spoke to her and says, ring the bell. So she says to God, look, you sick cunt, fuck me dead. Look, what the fuck do you want me in the bell for, you sick cunt? And so God didn't answer her. He rejected what she said, because she didn't say it like that, of course. But the second time God spoke and says, ring the bell. And again she said, look, you sick cunt, what the fuck do you want me to ring the bell for, you sick cunt? Fuck me dead. But again, God ignored what she said. Third time, God spoke, says, ring the bell. So you get these things in Christian magazines. You don't hear these things on the news bloody at all. So the third time, strange as it may seem, she did ring the bell. So the bell rang, so the men came scurrying out, and when they knew that there was nothing, they'd either, from memory of the article, couldn't quite remember whether they had actually just started to give her arseholes, or they were just going to start to give her arseholes, when suddenly, without warning, the hills and whatever shook. It was a tremendous earthquake. It was probably that big. It was one like in Wellington in 1600s. I thought it was in the 1800s. There were two massive earthquakes in Wellington in the 1800s. If they happened today, of course they'd be talking about climate change. But in the 1800s they weren't two massive ones, and I thought one of those was the ones, but I've just found out that up the top in the lookout here in Mount Vic in Wellington, they've got it written down there. And apparently this massive earthquake was in 1611. It was about that time in the 1600s when Kilburnie, and I'm not quite sure about, or Strathmore, was under the sea. It was the sea. The sea used to lap at Haitaitai, which is just a little suburb just out of Wellington City. You go through a tunnel and then you're into Haitaitai. It's only hardly about a mile, just out of the main centre of Wellington, called Haitaitai, and just started that down Moxham Ave, actually, to the end of Moxham Ave, I think it's Moxham Ave there, in Haitaitai. The sea used to lap there. But so it was lifted up about a mile or more back, and so it lifted the land up from the sea. And so what happened, they built Kilburnie, and I think they built Kilburnie, and they built probably Strathmore at Kilburnie. Where are we now? That other one I just can't think of it at the moment. Well, there was Seatoon. I don't know what happened there. They're up the hill a bit, I think. Just gone out of my head. The other one was swampy anyway, and they, about 80 years ago, so it was swampy, and they got the swamp out. Gone out of my head. It doesn't matter. So it used to be sea there anyway, and so they lifted it up. And I think too, around the Basin Reserve in Wellington, I think the sea used to lap there too. That's probably the same one in 1611 that raised the sea up, raised the land up, and so now the sea's about a mile away from the Basin Reserve in Wellington. So anyway, so this quake that hit when they're going to give her arseholes. They started to give her arseholes or whatever about this calling, ringing the bell, with nothing happening. So that quake was such a massive quake that it might have been similar to the one in 1611 in Wellington here, that as I say, it raised the land up from the sea. And and just trying to think of that other name. Just so I can grab it. Oh God, I should remember it. Goodness. Just to see if I can grab it. Kilburnie. Seatoon. Oh, it's just gone out of my head. Never mind. So anyway, so what happened was this massive earthquake come, and later when they went down to where the men were in the coal mine, they found the place to be devastated, and at least one or two of those miners became Christians as a result of that, not surprisingly so. So therefore, then getting back to the Pike River mine in New Zealand, somebody could hear that and say, well, look, what's my time? Oh, shit, my time's about 35 minutes, I think. So I can finish this one off 30. Oh, goodness, I must close. I'll just see if I can finish it off. Where are we? What was I saying? This big quake, 1611. Oh, bugger it. What was I going to say? 36 minutes. I was going to say about that quake. They lifted the land up, and oh, bugger it. I just gone out of my head again. I should write things down here. There's a big quake. It came, and oh, that's right. We're looking at the Pike River mine. That's right. You could say, well, look, why didn't that happen with the Pike River mine in New Zealand here? Why couldn't somebody pray like that and stop that Pike River mine? God could have done something. He could have stopped them. He could have got that that gas thing that exploded. He could have seen that the person got hold of it, and it didn't happen. Why didn't it happen? Why did he save that person in China, but he didn't save the Pike River mine? Why didn't he? So it's because, you see, we're not with it. We're supposed to be the salt of the earth, but we're not. If we had been in prayer and that for the miners and things, then God might have spoke even 25 years before it happened to see how to be consistent with prayer, to pray. And then before it happened, he could have said, the Pike River mine men are in grave danger. Pray to me that I will save them. And so that's what could have happened. They could have got saved. And there's one that did get saved. I haven't got time now. It's 37 minutes, so I must close. So New Zealand Christians are generally pretty nigh wishy-washy. They're more interested, as I say, instead of the America's Cup and the Tokyo Games, more interested than being the salt of the earth. Well, I must finish. There's something else I was going to say there, but so therefore. You say, well, why didn't God save the men in Pike River mine? See, it's up to us. You see, he has no feet but our feet, and no hands but our hands. Well, I must close this video, so put on another video maybe today or sometime. So it's Colin here, then signing off. We'll keep moving, keep in touch, because we've got to make New Zealand the greatest nation. But New Zealand cannot save the world when it can't even save itself. More troubles all the time in New Zealand. We've got to solve them. So bye for now. Colin signing off. Bye for now.